Alright folks, this was a request from Adariall. We were asking about scars in particular. How do I paint scars? What am I looking at when I'm trying to be a little more realistic? So the very first thing I just wanted to do really quick, I'm going to grab Wiki here for you guys. There's a whole bunch of different types of scars. You need to know what type of scar you're painting because if you're aiming for realism, you need to get everything color-wise, shape-wise, texture-wise right or fairly close. And there's a lot of tips and tricks here, but there's main types of scars. There's hypertrophic, keloid, atrophic, stretch marks, and umbilical scars. A lot of what you're going to see, especially when you're painting warriors, characters who have lots of physical trauma scars, is the hypertrophic scars, in particular keloid and atrophic. Keloid, you want to think is raised. It usually is kind of flat. It's wide. You see them with surgical scars a lot. Atrophic is what you're going to see in burn scars where you have pitting. So it's going to be lowered. Hyper means raised, and atrophic means abnormal or lowered. So you're going to be looking at a couple of different types, and skin color does play a part, specifically the amount of collagen with people who are POC that have darker skin. You can see here on the right hand side where we have a African American man who has been whipped and has keloid scarring on his back. It can be more aggressive in people with more skin pigmentation. So you are going to see, there is a difference between being black and white when it comes to scarring. Coloring is, again, I try to use as many picture references as I can get, so then we have those why are you doing gory searches question, but yeah, research, find lots and lots of pictures. I'm gonna grab this tab over here, hopefully. Alright, and scars do have different colors. I'm not trying to advertise for the site, but they do have a nice explanation. Scars that are red or purple in color are a result of damaged blood vessels and inflammation. So younger scars are going to be redder and more purple. Scars also that are normally silver can darken up and in cold weather. So, there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you are painting scars and what colors you want to use. Obviously, the older a scar gets, the more silver it's going to look. If you can see our example scar here on the right through Wiki, this is a free, Creative Commons. You can see where the scar is a little bit older here on the left, or at least it certainly wasn't as deep, and it has healed faster than its companion there below it. But scars, let's get going with the painting. So this is Aranis. I started him a long time ago. He needs a lot of work still, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to just show you how to do some color sampling. Whenever you've got a scar like this, it's really, 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 really good to grab as much of the original color as you can. And let's see, oops, helps if I have the right brush. This is what happens when I switch programs. Alright. There we go. So I'm color sampling. It's going to give me a rough idea. I'm going to go for some of my darkest areas, some of my lightest areas. Natural, we got the original skin tone here in this painting. Alright, so we've just grabbed a couple of colors here. So when you're painting a scar, you're going to go for lighter colors around the outside, generally speaking, and then there's almost a border on it that's going to be slightly darker, and you'll see it like right here. So we're going to it's just very, very faint. Let's go through and put that very faint border. We've got some really, really, really light stuff here, so let's actually nudge that a little bit lighter. And we got some highlights in here. I'm actually making a format for my scar right now. And I like the pitting here, so we're going to take some of that. You can see some of my old scars that I've made. I'm painting directly on this layer, which is not what I want to do. You always want to I try to make layers above and below. simply because that lets me control opacity and that lets me match skin color. Older scars are going to be more silver. Now you're going to see it's got that tiny border in here, but I'm going to blend it in. I'm going to shade it a little bit. And I'm kind of giving it shape. And I do want to leave it a little smudgy around the edges so that it will blend in with skin tone. So I've just started to make a scar shape here. Now what I'm going to do, since it's all on one layer, I'm actually going to copy this. Control C, Control V. You can see it made a copy and put it right over the original. We'll get rid of that just so that we're looking at the scar here. You can move it where you want it. I need to actually get it above the layer where I painted his chest, because we're going to put the scar right here. Take it. We're going to drop opacity just a little bit. Now obviously the color doesn't match because that's not the skin color I was painting with. Let's go Image, Adjustment. Let's do Color Balance. And now we're going to start playing with color balance. We're going to make it a little bit pinker, a little bit of blue. And just keep going until it stands out enough that you can tell that that's a scar. Now you can see I've kind of matched the color, but it faded in a little too much. So let's raise this a bit. We're going to do Image, Adjustment, Brightness, Contrast. Drop down the contrast. Brightness is going to make it really dark gray. So you're just going to play around with this until you get it where you want it. Now it's looking pretty good. That looks like an older scar. It's blended fairly close to his skin color. Go ahead and come in here into Filter Sharpen. We can play with Sharpen a little bit. Let's go with Smart Sharp. I actually have not set this yet because I just reinstalled this program. So you can mess around with the radius and how sharp you want it to be, how much noise you want or don't want. I'm actually going to let's add a little more noise. I kind of want it to be textury. Okay, so let's hit OK. It's going to apply that filter. There we go. And we've got, don't forget that you have opacity on, so you're kind of playing with that. Go in here and I can bump those edges with my smudge brush, so I'm making it blend in more. If this was in the shadow of a muscle and you want it to be a little darker, it's okay to hit it with Dodge and Burn. Just be aware that, you know, you might want to go with midtones. Like you can see that's a little too red. For newer scars, that actually would be perfect, like right there. But it's not what I'm looking for, so I'm going to drop this out of shadow into midtones. And then it gives you a little bit better of an idea. But that's one way to do scars. I've really exaggerated everything here. Don't be afraid to leave a border, especially older scars when they silver. You can add another border. And if you've got this where you want it, but you want it just a little bit darker, one of the things I like to do is we've got that layer. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to hit Duplicate Layer. And it's going to make that layer a little bit starker. And you can play around with this. You can take a duplicated layer and do Image, Adjust, Brightness and Contrast. So like say I wanted this a lot brighter and you're like, oh god, that's really horrible, and I hit some contrast, like wow, that stands out. But now I can drag this underneath my top layer. It's going to show a lot more because I adjusted the brightness and contrast, and I could play with opacity if I wanted it just to give it more of a white border, or I can leave it where it is, drag it back up to where it was, and slowly lower the opacity. And this is just kind of a cheater's way to brighten up the scar a little bit. Of course, now that I've done that, you might want to go back through because you're looking through this top layer down into the layer below, and it can kind of create a natural sense of balance in the painting, but it can make it too bright or too dark. So you might want to make the layer below a little bit less opaque so you can see it through. It's like a cheater's mask, but I find it looks more natural than using an actual mask. The next thing I just really quickly do is burn scars, and that's where you've got that pitting. There's absolutely nothing wrong with creating your own textures. Obviously, if you got access to like Creative Commons files, Morgue file, where people have taken pictures of their scars and it's okay for you to use them, nothing wrong with kidnapping that, making it into a brush, making it transparent. making your own scar brushes, I highly recommend it because not only is it's fun, it's a learning process, and you can play around and make your paintings come out pretty much any way you want them. So I have Val here, and he's got some pretty massive burn scars on his hands and his arms. This is my reference photo here on the right. I've used some hand brushing where I've hand painted, and there's some spots where I have actually painted over a texture brush that I made. And again, you can see I've made that an opaque layer. So you can be as aggressive as you want to or don't want to with your shading to show how fresh a scar is. Burn scars are just their own animal. Sometimes they're very, very purple forever due to lack of blood flow and damage to the area. Some scars get really silver, some pit a lot, some don't. With burn scars, you usually have uneven depth to the wound, so things will heal faster than others. Some places will heal over and then tear back open because they're causing something called a stricture or restriction, especially if it happens over bones and joints where you're moving a lot. So like on the wrist, the knuckles, just the act of moving the burn will tear it back open, and that causes it to start healing all over again, and it makes scar tissue, and scar tissue restricts the motion of the joint. So you will get a lot thicker scarring over the joints, like on his wrists, on the backs of his knuckles. That's really about it. This may not have been the most in-depth tutorial. I just wanted to kind of like cover why I do what I do and how I do it. Here's a really nice big look at that Creative Commons photo of a scar. That's not the best photo, but I used it definitely to check depth and height on the wounds. But there you go. Good luck with your scars. Have lots and lots of fun and try things for yourself. Try new things all the time. And again, if none of this applies to you, this doesn't work for you, totally cool. Do it your own way. It's just a quick tips and tricks. Thanks so much.